we've had here. I think it's probably the largest that we've ever had. But there are some more seats down here. If you guys want to come down and fill in, don't be shy. So I'm Randy Keene with the Columbus Area Historical Society, and this is one of our Tap Into History presentations. We do 6 of them a year, 3 in the spring and 3 in the fall. And before we continue or get started, if you're interested in getting on our emailing list so that we can let you know what we have coming up in future presentations, I'm going to send this clipboard around. If you'd like to get on the emailing list, put on your name and your email address legibly, and we'll get you on the list. So if you want to pass that around, and when it gets to the end, it can just go on the back table there. So the status of our museum, if you haven't heard, we did purchase the former Bellocs clothing store just around the corner next to the State Farm building, and so we're in the process of getting that whipped into shape, and hopefully we'll be open sometime next year. Upcoming events that the Historical Society has, we're participating in the wine walk on November 30th, so if we got any wine drinkers around here and you want to sign up for the wine walk, there's a number of different stops in Columbus where they go around and taste a different wine. In February, the Historical Society always has a soup and chili luncheon, so watch for that. We'll have details on that coming up. And then tonight, as I mentioned, is the last of the Tap Into History presentations. The biggest one we had prior to this was about a year ago for the Kurth Brewery, and we had over 100 people for that. So it's a matter of getting a head count tonight and see if people will like drinking beer more or going to the races. If you go to the races, you can go to the races. Anyway, our next presentation will be in March, and we have yet to determine what our spring ones will be. We'll have one in March, one in April, one in May. So there's no admission fee to come in tonight, but we do accept donations. So there's a big jar on the way out if you would be so inclined. And also, we sell Christmas ornaments. We have a different historic ornament every year. The new ones just came in. It's a view of downtown Columbus and celebrating Columbus's 150th anniversary this year of being a city. And we're always interested in getting new members for the Historical Society. So we meet once a month. Membership dues for the year is $15. And we're looking to have help when we get the museum open as far as expanding our hours that we've had in the past, previously at the previous museum. And so we're always looking for new members. And so like I said, we've got a record crowd here. We're probably over capacity. I won't tell the fire chief if you won't. So before we get started, I'm going to turn it over to Bill in just a minute. I was told that Rick Smith and Ralph Brannick used to sing the national anthem before the races, and they've agreed to sing a duet for the national anthem tonight. So, there he is.
Everybody stands where you would be. That's something like that. Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the blast bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave over the land of the free and the home of of the brave.
So, we could sing the national anthem prior to all of our presentations, so we had 6 of them next year. Tonight we're going to have our moderator, Bill Bloomer Jr., run the show here. And so he's put a lot of work into this, and we have our distinguished panel here. -1. So, anyway, I'm going to turn it over to Bill Bloomer Jr. at this time.
Thanks, Randy. I'm new to Columbus. I'm not new to the area. I am a new member of the Columbus Historical Society, and Randy and I got talking, and he found out that my grandpa actually started Columbus 151 Speedway. And a short time later, he's like, well, hey, let's do this presentation that we're doing today. And I'm like, sure. And boy, we started to scratch the surface, and we're not going to cover everything. There is so much knowledge in this room. Roll with us. We're doing the best we can. We're relying a lot on memories. I think we are going to change some of the internet history anyway that's out there. We'll give you some fresh dates. Even Columbus 151 at one point claimed they started in 1955, and that's not the case. It started earlier than that, which you'll hear from my dad. So we're going to do a little audience participation. We're not going to sing. This is going to be pretty painless. So all you're going to have to do is raise your hand to a few questions. How many of you have never been to Columbus 151 Speedway? We have a couple. All right. Well, welcome. Columbus 151, if you're heading toward Madison on 151, you go under an overpass just this side of County B. Start looking to your right, and you're going to see a little windmill off a little farther in the distance. That's where the track was. Today it is an MATC, Madison College training ground. If you're coming from Sun Prairie, you get just under the B bridge and you look to your left. There's one little windmill right there at the intersection. Look a little farther to your left and you'll see some of the buildings and stuff. That's where the track was for those of you who didn't know. All right, hands up for anyone who was there and never had any involvement in the track, never had any involvement with cars, were just a fan of racing. Hands up. All right, a few more people. Thank you for coming. How many people worked in concessions, mowed the lawn, took tickets, or did other sort of menial behind-the-scenes tasks? Not officials or anything, but menial tasks. Picked up Coke bottles and got 10 cents a piece for his allowance or whatever. Yeah, it probably wasn't 10 cents either. It was probably a nickel. All right, a few of those. Welcome. How many officials do we have? Scorers, timers, flaggers, pit stewards, anything like that from Columbus 151? Not many. One-ish.
No.
Well, then these guys. Yep.
Yep, these guys.
How many were not as a driver but otherwise affiliated with a car? You owned a car, you were the spouse of a driver, you crewed on a car. How many people fit that bill? All right. And then, lastly, who are the drivers in the field? Raise your hand. Awesome. Good to see you. Thank you all for being here. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to do some name dropping. We're not going to get everyone's name in. There are way too many names. And we had to pick some people, so we picked descendants of promoters and owners, and the most famous name in Columbus racing, Rick Smith, in my estimation. I told him, I know Terry Baldry's from Amaro, Alan Check's from Shantytown, wherever Shantytown is, and I knew that Rick Smith was from Columbus. And so we got him up here to share some stories. We've got Terry Sauer, who has, he is the record holder for the most checkered flags. That would be heats, trophy dashes, whatever. He's third in feature wins. And he's going to fill in some blanks for us when it comes to certain eras. And then we have Pete Moore, who still races. Won this year, right, Pete?
Yeah.
Did you win at the Dells? You want to feature at the Dells? He's going to be a ball of fun. That's why he's last. And then we have Howie Weissman, whose dad started the track. Howie has also been a champion, a class champion. I'm going to help you out, Howie, since your brother Bob ditched us. We'll get her done. And then my dad, Bill Bloomer Sr., will talk about his dad, my grandpa Fred, and a little bit about the Lions Club racing that he was passionate with. That happened. Oh yeah, and Randy asked me to, another hands up. Any trophy queens, I'm serious, any trophy queens, former trophy queens in the audience? There you go, Randy, we got one. All right, well, welcome, thank you for coming. I want to thank Gary Smelzer, the guy in the checkered flag hat there. He's elected not to talk much, but he brought us all sorts of cool stuff. The Wayne Walsh pennant there, Columbus pennant, a bunch of research. Gary is a historian like no other. Jay Bergen is not here, but he has later photos, a bunch over there. The 8x10s are available for sale for $5 each. He literally rescued from the dumpster Bob Cruz's collection of Columbus 151 shots. Want to thank Randy. Want to thank Bill Bain, who came in late. He's got some of the oldest photos you're going to see, some of the black and whites. Dad and I had some too, but Bill got his from Terry's dad, and they're ID'd, so there's some really cool photos in there. All right, so here we go with my pre-printed stuff. From the post-war stock cars to the golden age of the Milwaukee modified era, from the solid die to late models to 4 or more classes in the night, Columbus 151 has seen it all. Tonight we'll just scratch the surface. We can't possibly name all the names that made it a staple in south central Wisconsin racing, but we'll give you some. We think we have the lineage of the track pretty well worked out. The owners, the promoters, sometimes we're not always the same, will be the focus. In just trying to research 151, it becomes apparent that history isn't always perfect in its facts or how it ends up. We'll do our best tonight to give you an overview. In the end, we hope you'll learn something new and perhaps we'll jog a favorite memory. Thanks to Gary, one of the odder researches he did was just some of the stuff that was at Columbus 151. You had your staples, stock cars, modifieds, late models, hobby stocks, street stocks, backup cars. Then you had some bigger touring series, the Badger Midgets, the Wisconsin Challenge Series, one of them which was won by Eric Darnell, who went to NASCAR. The ASA Northern Division Series, which was won by local favorite Dave Klein. Big 8 late models, Mid-America stock cars, Tri-Arc Promotions, which was a precursor to ARCO, Wisconsin Sport Trucks, CWRA, and a lot more. We had Formula Indy cars, Lions Clubs, Inex Legend cars, Dirt Sportsman from Beaver Dam. There were big wheel races, DJ races, old timers races, demolition derbies, creeper races, which Terry will talk about. And by the way, Gary, you did not have on your list. I got that one. And things like flea markets and concerts, which, if anyone knows, not right now, but at some point, if anyone knows who did the concerts, we want to know. We heard there was a female country and western star, and there was apparently a rock concert. We don't know who they were, but you can come up and tell me afterwards. All right. Some of the names that Columbus had. Columbus Speed Bowl was what it started with. We went to Columbus Speedway, Red Bud Bowl briefly in the 70s, I believe, and then Columbus 151, and it was 151 in between there at some point too. Ran a bunch of different nights, went up against Angel Park on Sunday nights at one point. During the Smeltzer era, I asked Gary about that. He says, "What's Angel Park?" Literally. So, Southeastern Wisconsin Short Track Hall of Fame, located down in Hartford. It's just like it sounds. Columbus is one of its member tracks. I think Oregon's in on it, and then all the stuff by Milwaukee, Slinger, I think Plymouth's in on it. But I estimate Columbus has a good 10 to 15 at least that are represented in there between officials and drivers. Just this past November, or this year, Matt Kenseth, Pat Schauer, and Nathan Hosley were all inducted, and are all alumnuses from Columbus 151. Johnny Ziegler's in there, Chico Reeder, Jerry Eckert, just to name a few. Drivers that made it to the big time. There's, of course, Richie Bickle Jr., Nathan Hosley, Matt Kenseth, a young Matt Kenseth on the left with his dad Roy, and on the right with his first win, we get Dick Trickle and Ty Majeski, the current 2024 NASCAR truck champion. Ty's first time at Columbus 151 is an untold story, and if you look him up in Wikipedia, he had a fabulous first late model tryout at Hickory Speedway with one of the Waltrip brothers, not Mikey or Daryl, but another one. And that brother ended up calling Joe Wood at some point in Pathfinder Chassis and going, hey, I got this kid, he's a hot shoe. We want him to try out a late model, and can you set something up? Pathfinder Chassis is over near Sun Prairie, and they brought Majeski in and put him in a Pathfinder car, and within a couple laps he promptly stuffed it into the wall. Damaged it quite a bit. Joe sends the boys back to the shop to bring parts so they could fix the car to simply roll it back on the trailer. And that was Ty Majeski, the 2024 NASCAR truck champion's first effort at Columbus 151 Speedway. Another fun part of that is Joe says, yeah, I called Pete to see if we could have a practice, and Pete says something effective, yeah, you know where the key is, let yourself in. Speaking of the practices of Columbus 151, Matt Kenseth, I was lucky enough to, through a mutual friend, to get put in touch with him. And I asked him, I said, they don't want a lot from you. We want to really concentrate on the local drivers, but I said, tell me what you can about 151. And he said that his dad would come on Wednesday nights and practice. Matt knew it was Wednesday night. Everyone here knows it was Wednesday night. A lot of times, what, $10 to get into practice? And then Dad would let him hop in the car a little bit at the end of the night. Well, back in '88, when he finally got his shot at 16, he said he had about 3 starts under his belt when he won his first feature. His first feature ever won was at 151, and that's the picture of it right there. And of course, he went on to be the last NASCAR Winston Cup champion. There's been more NASCAR champions. He's the last one to win Winston Cup. Another memory that Matt shared was, he says, you know, I always really appreciated Dave Oswald. I believe Dave's here tonight, actually.
Yes.
And I just recall him being really friendly toward me. He says, I was a real introvert as a kid, and he was just a real friendly guy, and I really appreciated that. So that was pretty cool. Another luminary I got to talk with, well, first of all, there was Stan Fox, who went and made it big. Unfortunately, Stan's mostly remembered for the crash. But Stan made the Indy 500 many times, and he won a Badger Midget feature at Columbus 151. And then the next guy, Billy Englehart. Billy raced in the mid-'60s by the time the track was paved, and he raced in the modifieds, and he won 1 feature, he said. And we talked more about the track and such, but when Billy and I got done talking, all of a sudden I got an email, and he says, Bill, do me a favor. Drive home this idea to your audience. The reason tracks like Columbus are so very important is that without Saturday night racers, there would be no NASCAR or Indy 500 as we knew them. That is when homegrown kids who aspired to move on to the higher levels of competition could do so, and thousands of fans followed them down the roads across America. Some drivers I competed against around home were better at their craft than those I competed with at the higher levels. I could make you a list with ease. And then talking with Matt Kenseth, I kind of ran that by him, and he concurred. And then he mentioned the likes of Pete Moore and Dave Phillips as some of those who were tough competition during his early years. To paraphrase both of them, to get your start, you have to start at places like 151. You need promoters, you need officials, you need hot dog sellers, you need beer vendors. And you need the likes of those drivers with the last names such as Gruenberg, Nadelstadt, Bischofberger, Brunig Waters, Wendt, Schultz, Bender, Ziegler, Ritalik, Riedner, Melius, Johnson, Fosbender, Beardser, Wood, Weber, Gerke, Bowers, Adams, Harklaw, Reimer, Coppernall, and so many more. Weissman, Smith, Sauer, more. Folks, drivers, be proud of yourselves. Matt Kenseth and Billy Englehart think the world of you guys. You all did a great job. Thank you all for coming tonight. I hope we're informative, and with that, I'll turn it over to my dad, Bill Bloomer Sr.
Thank you. Columbus 151 Speedway came into existence kind of as a quirk. The Rio track, which some of you may know of and some may not, raced during the middle part of the 1940s. It closed, we think, at about 1948 or 49. With that, there was no track running at that time in central Wisconsin on dirt. After that, and after Columbus started in 1951, many other tracks followed suit. Gentleman Jack Crumby, a farmer here in Columbus, owned some land out off of Highway 151. As the story goes in my family, my dad, who was a pilot during World War II, did some crop dusting and also some training of some of the locals to get their pilot's license. Was either crop dusting around Jim's farm or Jack's farm, or through conversations over a poker table, the discussion came up of the Rio track closing and the need for another track in the general area. Crumby and my dad got together. I don't know which one of them realized that there was a natural bull first. My dad, through his flying and seeing it, or Jim or Jack has with his plowing or whatever. But they got together and decided to build a racetrack. They went out and they measured the land, and they found they were about 2 acres short of being able to put a quarter mile where they wanted it in the natural bowl. Story goes that 2 acres were purchased. We believe it's on the north end, turn 3 and 4, and we're able to expand the track to a full quarter mile, and they end up opening the track in 1951. It was called the Columbus Speed Bowl. The concessions were handled, the beer concession by the VFW, the food concession by the American Legion, which my dad was a member of both. My dad ran the track, he handled the time and scoring. The announcer was Hal Woods from Beaver Dam, who he and his brother-in-law had I believe, a furniture store. His brother was Johnny Janchak, and he helped my dad with his timing and scoring. The flag man was Gene Mertz. Gene flagged for about a year, maybe a year and a half, and he was killed. And either he crashed a car or a car crashed into him. Again, I was about 8 or 9 years old at the time, so it's a little bit foggy for me to remember exactly how he died. And I do not know who, I know my dad, I believe, pinch hit flagging 1 or 2 races, but then another flag man was brought in. The track facilities consisted of outhouses, planks over the top of railroad ties. They weren't very comfortable, and a few slivers were received over the years, but that was the setup for the track. But it was a natural bowl, and it raced until 2015. Dad had the track for 1951 and 52 as the promoter. In 1951, a name that some of you may recall, Jingles O'Brien was a track champion in the stock cars. Not on the hockey rink, on the stock cars. Jingles also had a tavern, probably sold more beer in the city of Madison than the Club Lamarck. Out of his Quonset hut across from Camp Randall. Had the opportunity to speak with him one afternoon at the bar, and we reminisced for about a half an hour over the first couple of years of racing at Columbus 151. It was, on paper, was the Speed Bowl, but in actuality, I think more people called it the Dust Bowl. The dust at Columbus 151 Speedway was atrocious. There was enough chlorine dumped on that track, and I can testify to that because I used to ride around on Saturday afternoons with my dad, either dumping chlorine or watering it, to fill probably every swimming pool in the state of Wisconsin, in high schools and also outdoor rinks or outdoor swimming pools. The crew that ran the track did the best they could to keep the dust down, but it just never seemed to be a problem. It's always a matter they could never get a good firm surface on it. There was a water supply. There was a swamp down the eastern end, I believe it was, and they used to get the water from there. I believe it was kind of pumped out of a spring, and I'm not really sure. I was about 9 or 10 when we were doing the pumping of that. I was just there as an observer and to tell him to not get too close to the wall with the truck. The second year of racing, we're not quite sure. We have two drivers, Johnny Lobeck and what's here? Help me out, Bill.
I don't have my notes. Was it Doherty?
No.
Well,
Les?
since we don't know for sure.
We'll get to that maybe after we get a cold beer in our hands.
Yeah.
I usually think better after a couple, and my memory gets a little better too. Anyway, the track ran on Sunday afternoons, and again, with the hot summer sun pointing out, that may have given a little bit of a problem with the dust. So the Dust Bowl was the Weber, was the name we couldn't come up with. So sorry for stumbling through that. So the fall of 52, my dad decided that he was going to relinquish the responsibility for the track, and the track then laid vacant until Howie's family took it over in 1959, I think it was 1959, and he found a lot of weeds out there. It had to be cut, and the surface to the track redone with bringing in a lot of clay. So that was how the track got started. I had the opportunity later on in life. My mother would not allow me to race after experiencing the ups and downs of racing with my dad. When I came out of the Army, he had a salvage yard, and Mother put her foot down and said if we were going to race, we were not going to be living under her roof. So we decided to put racing aside, and Dad did bring me out to the track a couple of times before I started college with the record. And then it was Boomer's Auto Body, and we were at the track for a couple of Sunday afternoons before I started college. One of the unique things was that I did get into a race car after I turned about 50. A group of us from Sun Prairie started racing with the Lions Club series, and one of the tracks that they raced at, they had been racing for over 20 years and had accumulated about $300,000 to $700,000 that they had donated to Lions Clubs in the southeastern part of the state. They were racing at that time primarily twice a year at Lake Geneva, and then had expanded to run at Jefferson. And Don McNichol, Pierre, who some of you are quite familiar with, who had the country in and also taught at MATC in the culinary arts for many years, where I happened to spend 18 of my teaching career, and we decided that there was a need for Sun Prairie to get involved with Lions Club racing. At the bar at a Lions Club meeting, where two members of the Lions Club bet each other $100 that neither McNichol nor I would have a car ready to race at Jefferson. So in 10 days, he and I both built a race car, with the gracious help of Teddy Kreischer out at his place on Pierceville Road. And we started racing. And after a couple of years, the track at Lake Geneva fell to condos and apartments, and they had just the Jefferson track to race at. And I suggested that maybe we could race at Columbus. And there was a lot of politics with Lions and which district were running the racing, and so we became the bastard child of Lions Club racing. And through the good graces of Pete and his dad, made the track available to us on Monday nights. And we were the only racing association in the country that raced on Monday nights regularly. Of course, it was only about 6 times a year, 7 times a year, but we still had that distinction. The Sun Prairie Lions really got behind it. We ended up with 7 or 8 cars just from our club alone that were involved with the racing. We put on the show at Columbus, and all the proceeds that were obtained went into the Sun Prairie Lions Club Eye Research Fund and other deals that they had going with eye care. Some of the people that were racing were McNichol, myself, Lynn Davenport, Bob Downing, who was a teacher and wrestling coach at Sun Prairie High School, and also probably refereed many of the football games here at Columbus. Bill Teft, who's here in the audience tonight. Rick Smelzer, is that name familiar? Rick, uncle, was Bob, who had the sponsorship of the track for a number of years. Terry Ulch, Steve Sharpie, you may have bought some insurance from him, or some real estate from him. And then Steve Badeau, and then there was Matt Moser. I did not know Steve, I met him once, and Moser I saw for one of the programs. That was after I had moved to Central Illinois. But the Lions Club racing was really important, and Pete can probably address some of the results of our involvement with the track. And we developed a very heavy following of drivers from that southeastern part that really came up, and we had 60 to 80 cars each time the Lions Club raced at Columbus 151 Speedway. And it was unique for me too, because I was able to race on a track that my dad had promoted at, and I, for the first couple of years at the Lions Club race there, was able to promote it and do what my dad had done, and then raced on the track that he did not have a chance to race on himself, though he did everything else up there. So thank you very much for your patience and my stumbling through a couple of names here, and I'm going to pass this on to my son.
All right, I'm going to be a bit of a surrogate here since Bob Weissman. Bob, are you here? Yeah, Bob ditched us. He is absent without permission. And we have Howie here, and Howie's going to want a little help with his his memory. We relied, rather than writing this all down, we've got it down loosely, but we're relying on the memory of these guys to share the information, you know, a living oral history, and hopefully that's good enough for you guys. And if you want to challenge us later on some facts and numbers after at Cersei's, feel free. Howie, when your dad bought the track from who?
Dad. Oh,
Jack
Crumby. Jack Crumby,
He-
yeah, I think that's the one.
Yep, he bought it from Jack Crumby, and when you guys got it, and this is a space in the history. There are some publications that say they were racing in 55, but we don't believe that's the case. We believe when my grandpa was done in 52, that was it until Weissman's bought it. And when you guys bought it, it wasn't a racetrack, right?
Yeah, it was.
Well, it was grown over.
Yeah. It was clay.
It was clay, and you raced it that way for a while
Yeah,
in the late 60s.
yeah.
Gary Smelzers does not have any stats for us until 63. They raced late models. Joe Doherty was still around. Les Pfeiffer, who did come up in the 3 or 4 names we had from 52 that had raced, was still there. Joe Jones might have been the champion. Again, I got to get Gary going on that. He missed that part.
And 63 is when they blacktopped it.
63 is when they blacktopped it. All right,
Yeah,
so
there was dirt up till then.
but they raced it on dirt when your
They
dad
raced
had it.
on dirt.
So,
Yeah.
Gary, you got that? Where are you? You gotta get that down. All right. In 64, it looks like the modifieds came in, and we're seeing winners like Fuzzy Fosbender
Yeah.
and Willie Gaden.
Yeah.
You remember those days?
Yeah.
What can you
Yeah.
tell me about those days?
I don't remember too much of anything. I know them people were there.
Yep. Yep, that was, this is kind of what they call the golden age of Wisconsin racing, and Columbus was right in the middle of it. Father Gruba did a book on that very era, the Milwaukee modified era, and he does give Columbus a little bit of a mention in here in his book. The book is literally that thick, and it's prominent on a lot of tracks that aren't Columbus, but Columbus gets a mention. They did race Sportsman 2 back then in 64. We got Dwayne Wiesenden, Bill Ritalik, Les Helgested. Yeah. When did you start racing?
64, I think it
In
was.
64, you started racing. All right, and you were doing a hobby stock, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because
And
I had a brand new Chevelle, and I was at the gate when they come down the hill, and a guy came around the corner, lost his wheel, went right through the front windshield of my brand new car.
so you turned it into a stock car?
Yeah.
In 65, you got more famous names from Wisconsin. We got Willie Gaden winning a race,
Yeah.
Billy the Cat, Billy Johnson Jr. Now that's the cat, right, folks? And then there was another Billy after him, maybe?
Yep.
Yeah, all right. And then his dad was Big Bill or Bill Sr. Willie Gaden's in there, Pedro Roll is in there. We think that they were racing during the day, and these big names that would be coming, you'll see, Melius is in here a bit, 2 Miles a Mouse, but they were probably heading to Slinger after that. So, these guys were racing 6 times a week in the modifieds, and Billy Englehart, the race he won, he marveled at how clean Billy the Cat Johnson was right behind him. And then Terry Sauer reminded me, he says, those guys had to be clean, because they were running for money. They were feeding their families with this stuff. Running 6 nights a week, they couldn't afford to crash. So that's why they were so clean and why it was such good racing back then. I'm just looking to see, as I know he shows up in the stats here somewhere. And again, we were kind of hoping that his brother was going to be here to fill in some blanks, so I'm tap dancing a little bit. But even in 66 now, we've got late models. We've got Rich Bickle Sr., Johnny McNamara, Ed Hume, just to name a few. And do you know why your dad, when your dad stopped promoting the track, he still owned the land, right?
Right.
And why did was he filthy rich that he just didn't want to mess with the track anymore, or why did he get rid of the track or turn it
I
over?
think he was going broke.
That was a story with my grandpa too. Well, these guys maybe did better. We'll find out as we go here. So, anything else you can tell us about the track, about owning it, your dad owning it in those days, or the work you did?
Yeah, toward the end when he didn't run it anymore, Smelser did.
Okay,
That's
Yep.
where that came in.
okay. Who did your dad sell the property to? Do you remember? Was it Hyman?
Yeah,
No?
one time,
It was Fry's? Okay.
yeah, but yeah, it's been a couple of sales in between there. Some women owned it.
Yeah, it got, yep,
Margaret Fry.
yep. Where did Rod Hyman come in? Do you know? Is that name you know?
That was before that.
Right, we had him in like 69-ish taking the track. Yeah, okay. All right, anything else, Howie, you could think about your dad's era, that kind of golden age of modifieds and the sportsmen and you racing and losing your good
All I
windshield?
remember in '63, he blacktopped it.
In 63, so there's something you can take to the bank. In 63, it got blacktopped.
Now I gotta change the slide.
Oh, and then lights. Yeah, the lights must have come,
Yeah, I don't remember when they,
we had 61,
probably right.
right about
Not
there.
sure.
All right. Anything else, Howie? No? All right, well,
That was in '70.
Howie won a championship in the 70s when his dad didn't own the track anymore and there wasn't any collusion or anything going on. Yeah, okay. Howie, thank you for sitting here and helping us out. Please stay here in case we have any questions, okay?
I will.
Thank you.
A few more slides in there if you want.
Yeah, this is, I want to thank Skip Kreis online. He actually was doing some genealogy and found the 1952 ad where we came up with the dates for Columbus Speed Bowl. Skip had found a 52 ad for Columbus Speed Bowl out of the State Journal online, and we had a photo that said these pictures available Sunday, September, whatever, Columbus Speed Bowl. And Randy had the foresight. He Googled it and said, well, that would have been 51. So we got 51, 52. We've got documentation that the track was operating then. And that's kind of something that's not really been out there before. And then just a couple more cool ads that Randy came up with, advertising the lights in 61. Go ahead and switch that to the next one.
So now, there we got the wrong year. So you can't believe what you see on the internet.
Yeah, no, there's a lot wrong. Yep. What do we got next? And this is actually a repave that Schmelzers did. But you get the point. They widened the track also then, according to an article that I read.
See the planks.
Yeah, you can see the planks there, and let's see the next one. That was just a cool old sign. Anyone remember that sign? I remember, probably from the 70s, the pickup truck with the sign in the back, I think. Some more overviews. And then there's Darlene Schmelzer up on the judge's stand. That would be Gary's mom, Bob's wife. They were the next promoters of the track.
Anybody recognize the other two?
Bob Schmelzer and Hal Wood.
Bob Schmelzer and Al Wood, okay.
It was Hal.
No, that's not Bob, but that's Hal Wood.
Okay,
Yeah, I was right.
yep. All right, next picture. Then we've got Bob Schmelzer ready to give Johnny Z a trophy. I didn't see him here. I was kind of hoping Johnny Z would be here. Johnny Ziegler, are you here? Didn't think so. All right. I sent his daughter a message kind of late. We were hoping he'd come. Go ahead. One of the later signs.
Friday night.
Friday night races, yep. Clyde and Sue Purvis from the Cardinal Cage promoted it in there for a year, we believe. We'll let Rick and Terry talk about that a little more. Right now then, I think we'll turn it over to Rick Smith and have him kind of take it from a driver's point of view. boy, his family's steeped in Columbus 151, that's for sure. Rick, if looks like you got some notes there, you're welcome to stand. If you just kind of tell folks about your family and your racing.
I'm getting tired of sitting. I didn't race at Columbus right away. I didn't move to Columbus till 1963. So a lot of the stuff that happened before that, I have no recollection of now. But my daughter decided that it was, well, actually me too, we decided that she wanted to race too, so we got her racing with me. TV channel 27 used to have, if I remember rightly, wife can remind me, Judy Kroll from PM Magazine called me. I thought it was a fluke, so I didn't answer her right away. So about 3 days later, she called again and talked to me. She wanted to do a special on dads and daughters racing. So she came out and followed us around. We'd have the, well, it's on the wrong type of things to show. So we are getting that transferred. Maybe we can get that and get it to the Historical Society where they can, people can come and watch that. My grandkids raced also, so we got 3 generations of racing in my family. Myself, my daughter, my 2 granddaughters, and my grandson. We all raced. My grandson raced mostly dirt, although he did race Columbus also as a late model. Ricky was the first one. She started in the front-wheel drive cars, if you remember those. And then Bobby, the next one, also raced there. Ricky raced for Don Thrush, and a sportsman. And Bobby raced for Dick Zickert and a late model. She also raced for Pete Moore and his late model. So there's been a lot of racing in my family. It's been a lot of fun through the years. Sometimes I like to go back, but then I think, yeah, what would I be like now if I did that? All I did was years. So I'm just happy to have the memories. Any questions you might have, ask my wife, okay?
All right. Let's hear it for Rick Smith. Thank you. All right, now we're going to rely on Terry Sauer to kind of talk about the Schmelzer era. Gary's here, like I said, Gary's done a fabulous job with the history, not only of Columbus 151, but any other track in Wisconsin you'd want to name about. He's got something on it. But he wasn't comfortable coming up here and talking. He preferred to sit and listen and share his stuff, his photos, and this whole table over here is darn near all Gary's stuff, so we sure appreciate Gary and appreciate his family. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Terry Sauer and have you talk about your association and driving and the Schmelzers, and if you cover Purvis and the rest of them, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, sir. A lot of you probably know him. I'm Terry Sauer. I raced at Columbus since 1970 till last night, August 21st, 2015. We ran there. Rick talked about family racing. I can trump you on that, Rick. We got 4 generations in my family that race. Started out with my dad back in the 50s, and he's also in the Hall of Fame now as a racer and an official.
Turn the mic on, Terry.
Then I'm the 2nd generation, and my sons Greg and Steve were the 3rd generation. They raced at Columbus. In fact, Steve was the last sportsman champion in 2014 at Columbus. Greg won numerous features there. And now my 12-year-old granddaughter is racing also. Last year at the Jefferson State Championships, the weekend there, she won 2 out of the 3 features in her bandolero class, so pretty proud of that. You mentioned the Bob Schmelzer era. One thing that sticks in my mind, Bob was a racer's promoter. Everybody loved Bob. He did everything he Bob got up and told everybody, he says, guys, this is gonna be it. You know, I can't run the track anymore, it's just financially a burden. And, but don't worry, you're gonna get paid tonight, there's, you know, we're gonna have the money for you. And the one thing that sticks in my mind, all the racers that were there that night, there was only one guy that went up to get his pay, everybody else told Bob to keep it. That's how much I thought of it. So there's a lot of promoters over the years that nobody would do that for. Probably most of them.
And it looks like Rick Smith might have won that last race, if I'm reading Gary's records right. And Joe Shear, who a lot of us know, Joe Shear won the late model race that night. Johnny Ziegler was fast time for the last night at Columbus under Bob's.
Something about that.
Smith and Joe Shear, yeah, they won.
Yep, all right.
I remember Ralph and Norbert was your uncle, right? That was Ralph's brother.
Yeah.
The Wisemans, when they took the track over, and my dad, Hank Sauer, was a flagman at many tracks in the area at that time. Portage, Beaver Dam, Jefferson at times, and Baraboo, different tracks like that. And Ralph and Norbert needed a flagman, so they came to my dad's house, and he was flagging like 4 or 5 nights a week, and he didn't want any more work. And I remember Dad saying that Mom finally went to bed because it was getting late, and they were still there trying to convince him to flag. And finally, Dad thought, I gotta get a little work tomorrow. Okay, I'll do it. Just to so Dad flagged there for probably 12, 13 years in the 70s, late 50s, 60s, and early 70s. I remember the Matt Kenseth year when Matt drove Roy's car there at Columbus. I remember the first night he was running the car, and back then I was fairly fast, but I remember this kid in front of me taking up the whole track, wishing he'd get the heck out of the way so I could pass him. And little did I know, a few years later, NASCAR champion.
Yeah.
Matt had a son, Ross, who started racing at Columbus in 2010, maybe something like that, early 2010s. And I remember they parked next to us in the pits there, and there was this young kid, you know, and there was some Pathfinder guys there helping him with his car. Roy Kenseth, Matt's dad, was sitting there in a lawn chair by the trailer, and I said, hey Roy, I remember when I used to race against you here, and then I raced against your son Matt, now I'm racing against your grandson. Roy looks at me, he says, that makes you pretty darn old, don't it? Yeah, I guess. One other year at the Speedway I'll touch on was the late 70s when Fry's owned the track, and Dick Tucker was going to lease it that year. I think it was 78, I believe, or 9.
That sounds about right, yep.
Yeah. And everybody thought that was kind of strange because he had a successful track in Jefferson. You know, why does he want to run another track? Well, he's going to have a track open, you know, it'd be great. And after about 2 weeks, he said he was going to close it up. That was it. He wasn't going to run it anymore. All the racers was, you know, losing our track here. What are we going to do? And Rick Smith and I and some names from the past, Roger Meyer, Al Biedler, I think Bob Wiseman, decided to approach Clyde Purvis. He had the Cardinal Cage bar in Columbus, which was fairly new, but he was quite a promoter and a go-getter and a successful guy. And we used to, of course, go in there after the races occasionally and have a beer or two. We knew Clyde, pretty good. The group approached him and said, Clyde, you ever think of running a racetrack? No, I never really thought about it. Maybe I could do that. So he took over the lease the rest of that year. the grass, made everything look nice. Did some advertising, the crowds were coming back, we had fields of cars. And things were looking pretty good, and then, so the following year, he was gonna, up his lease, re-up his lease on it. Couldn't come to an agreement with the track owners, so he backed out, you know, it's the end of his year. The track was kind of floundering around there for a couple of years after that, until Pete and his dad and the Moore family purchased it, and the rest is history, I guess. Ran it for a lot of years there, and it was quite the facility.
Creeper races.
Oh, yeah, creeper race.
Yes.
The Moores would always, no, this was in the 70s, yeah. Before the Moores. In my younger days, they used to do some unique stuff. I didn't understand it here. And they were gonna have creeper races one year. You know, creepers and mechanics roll around in their shop, under their cars. So I get my creeper out, and there was, I don't know, half a dozen other guys. So we're gonna race on a creeper down the front Speedway. That was halfway decent shape for the young guys. I ended up winning it by quite a margin there. Well, I'm a creeper champion, you know. So then they were gonna have it the next year, and they're gonna show me, they're gonna make us go a lap, you know. Lap around the racetrack. I wore out a pair of shoes doing that lap, but I defended my title.
What can you tell us about 1975? Schmelzers are done. Steve Hyman, whose brother Rod had it before Schmelzer. Steve Hyman stepped in for 1 year. He's got some fabulous records. He's got all the sign-in sheets, the payout sheets, with the person signing for him, like Tom Reffner, Johnny Ziegler, signing for themselves. What can you tell us about? You've been in touch with Steve, and Steve couldn't be here. He just couldn't be here. But you had all of his stuff. What can you tell us about that year Steve had it?
We were kind of excited about it because his brother Rod had been pretty successful in the late 60s. It was okay, but he never had the success that his brother had. I think that was maybe when the concerts were there.
We're thinking that might have been the country and western concert, might have been there. We had the rock concert in '79. Car counts were an issue. We saw that in the sheets. Why were car counts an issue?
There was part of the swing tracks that guys were only running like Ford running next tournaments a week, 8 night a week or whatever. And if the cars weren't there, the fans weren't there. And it's just a vicious circle. If there's no fans, there's no money to pay. If there's no pay, racers don't show up. I know for that part of that year, at least maybe the whole year, you remember, they ran the one class. I mean, late models were running next to the hobby stocks. You just went by time.
We even had some modifieds running.
Yeah, yeah. It was kind of quite a unique field of tires. Class.
That's about it.
Probably about it. I guess my one claim to fame is I'm the only guy that raced every night that the Moores. I really raced at least once a year. I mean, the years that the Moores owned it. Over 33 years, yeah.
Any flagmen that you really liked or didn't like, or officials you really liked or didn't like?
Steve was all right.
Oh, I liked him. Yeah, no, never mind.
He and his drink
I wasn't gonna
cocktails
race.
together.
I can think of one of the people stories.
Go.
Yeah.
Nice and
When I
loud.
started racing.
Louder.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's
When
okay.
I first started racing, I had an old 55 Chevy that my uncle gave me, and I put an old junk motor in it. And I thought I knew all about racing, but I didn't know anything about driving a race car. And at that time, you know, you'd kind of get run over by the veterans if you didn't know much. Rick Smith kind of took me under his wing. He probably doesn't even remember that. And the first couple of weeks I started in the back because I didn't want to get run over. And funny, one week Rick says, just start up front where you're supposed to, and hang on, do what you can. Some good advice from a veteran to a rookie. Appreciate that, Rick. I think, I don't know.
Again, thanks to Gary's well-printed stats and well-researched stuff, 79 Steve Hyman's year, or 75 I should say, he had some big hitters at the track. Tom Reffner had fast time one night. Bill Ritalik was still around. Johnny Z, Conrad Morgan, the Hall of Famer Jerry Eckert, the world's oldest teenagers, that's what he's called. Bobby Gunn, Terry Sowers shows up here in the 75 records. Some stuff does get pretty short after that. 76, boy, we're looking at not a lot of races. 77, Jerry Wood starts showing up at the track, winning some races. Rick Smith's still there in 77. John Olson, Jerry Wood, Gary doesn't put a champ in, but Jerry Wood, boy, he was winning a lot, getting a lot of fast times back then. Same time, 77, Pat Shower showing up in the sportsman ranks. And of course, as I mentioned earlier, Pat Shower, a new Hall of Famer too, along with Jerry Eckert. So it was a good age back then, even if Trickle wasn't here every day or Shear, they sure had their share of really good drivers. And then we come to Pete Moore. Pete Moore being a driver and jack of all trades probably at the track. His folks took it over from Margaret Fry, and we're lucky to have Pete here. And Pete, if you can just tell us about your dad and starting the track and take it where it will.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming. Yeah, it was a deal. He stuck his foot in his mouth and we ended up with the place. I mean, we had a lot of help. I mean, friends and family, and Terry Sowers' full family, they were up there faithful every week. Sonny Stouter used to race. He worked up there. He burned up lawnmowers trying to get things mowed when we're up there. There was constant work. The year we ended up with it was the year I got married. But we had 33 years, a lot of different flagmen. Dave Rodiger and his wife were a big help for us. From start right till pretty much the end. But like I said, it was a lot of friends and family, that's what helped. And a lot of them were ex-racers. Like you mentioned Steve Bedeau, he worked up there. But it was pretty much the same people stuck around the whole time we were there. But it was just, like I say, we raced on Thursday nights even, and that wasn't on it. And then Oregon would close, and then we went to Friday nights, and we just ended up staying there. Because we tried Sundays, and it was just what's going on in the race is just too much other activities going on. You got baseball, football. It's cut into everything for sports. But otherwise, I mean, it was fun while we were there, but it just got to be too much of a headache. If it was up to my wife or myself, my brother, one of my brothers and sisters, we'd still be there. We didn't want that property going, especially to METC. But when my mom did it, none of us kids knew about it. And she went in without a lawyer, and they had 3, and so that pretty much finished it off. I tried fighting it, but I couldn't fight it. I didn't have the money, or they had everything covered, all their lines were dotted.
Pete, you touched on the beginning when how your dad got started. We kind of cobbled a quote together there. It was in a driver's meeting. Does that look about right?
Yeah. I mean, Margaret was nicely. I mean, I got along good with the Fry family. Even after we got it, I still run into them. But I mean, it's a tough business. I mean, everybody that's been there, like Schmelzers, I mean, everybody's, it's a struggle. And I don't know, we had a different business that we're, right now, I'm gonna probably closing that in 6 months. But it's a tough deal, and I mean, you spent from the spring till, I'd be up in the middle of winter working, my brothers and I working on buildings and stuff, trying to clean it up, fix it up. We tried to make it look nice, we put all the walls in, we blacktopped it. Barrels, we built that new building, had a lot of help from the Barrel family from town here, they were good people too. But it was just a struggle the whole time. But I mean, it was a good time, we used to average, I think, there for a while was 130 some cars. And our goal, like, my dad started that backup racing. And that probably had the most recognition of anything up there. Cause that went on national TV, there was people come over from, one of the Remsicks is here, I think. But they were here from, NASCAR even had a dyno that used to help us, he was one of my sponsors, but he got it somehow tied in with NASCAR. On their Sunday deals, they'd announce that. But when the backups, nobody could figure out how we ever got on there, but that was there. I think there was somebody come over from Germany, and they spent the whole day up there filming it. Ripley's Believe It or Not was up there filming. That was just on the backup stuff.
I think it's the Wide World of Sports that, the initial.
Yeah, the Wide World of Sports. So we did get some good recognition out of it, but it was a fun time. I mean, there was a lot, I could think of nights, brother and I'd leave there on, Thursday or Friday nights? Thursday nights. One of the two anyways, it'd be daylight. There was all the drivers would stick around and drink right till daylight. Then I'd have to leave them, I'd have to leave, yeah. I mean, it was pretty much that way right till the end. It was all the social event.
You never had a problem with the Lions Club, though?
Yeah. Drank us out of beer.
First time.
We had reserves in the
ran out of
pits.
beer, the first Lions Club race.
We had reserves in the pits though, too.
But yeah, it was a good time. I met a lot of good people up there. I mean, I'm still friends with most everybody. Ones that are still alive. But if it had been up to myself and my brother, we'd still be there. But if anybody's got any questions, I'll just hand the mic back over.
That's what we're gonna do. Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to touch on the last race I ever held at 151 Speedway. That year was 2015, and the track was sat vacant or idle most of the summer there. There was practice on Wednesdays, I believe, yes, so there was no races. We always had the Dick Moore Memorial, that was an annual affair. And we thought, you know, the track's still here, let's have one more Dick Moore Memorial. So my other half, Ann and I, decided that we wanted to be part of it. We, along with the Moore family then, we promoted that last race, got sponsors, had flyers out all over. It was August 21st of 2015. And we thought, you know, is anybody gonna show up? Because we were running against, you know, Madison at that time on that night. They had it was one of the Howie Letto Memorial things, and they always get a big crowd for that. And during the night there, I was down in the pits, looked up at the hill, and I thought, well, there's some people up there, at least it ain't gonna be empty. Kept looking in the pits, and it was getting harder to find places to park. There was just over, I think, 100 cars that night. And by the end of the night, by the time the races started, the hill was packed. It was standing room only. And it was just an unbelievable night with the driver participation. And we topped it off with a big fireworks display. And that was well after midnight, I think, when the fireworks went off. But everybody, I think, kind of knew it might be the last race ever at the track. And I think that's one reason everybody wanted to be there. It was a place to be that night. And we gave the place a heck of a going away party, I guess.
All right, folks, looking at the clock and everything else, a lot of these guys gotta get to bed. Myself included. We're not gonna hold you hostage on a Q&A. These guys are around, they can sit here, they can walk around. You got questions, you want answers, come talk to these guys now. I know there's a lot of friends in the room. There's a lot of cool stuff to see yet. Check that all out. When Terry and I, we just met, we talked on the phone a couple times, we just met last week, he talked about, boy, it'd be nice to have a 151 reunion, and I'd say this is a pretty good start, you know, keep this in mind, maybe this summer you can get something together at Jefferson or somewhere and have a real reunion, but my wife said, boy, I think there's going to be a lot of people at that thing tonight. I'm like, I put the over-under at 50 and I'm betting the under, and boy, I was wrong. Thank you all for coming. Thanks again to Gary Smelzer for providing all the stats that he did and all the cool stuff to look at. Thanks for Bill Bain for coming in with all the old photos. And we're going to meet at Cersei's. They've agreed. Randy pulled some strings. Cersei's right across the street. It's a brew pub. They do have liquor also. They're going to be open if someone wants to go over there and have a cocktail. And
So they're open till 9.
they're open till 9, but they may stay open later if
Maybe.
they have
a
some
big enough crowd.
people.
We'll make them stay open.
Yeah, it's no food though. They won't have any food. So we thank them for that possible consideration. And guys, one last thing from any of you? I sure appreciate it. I think just give them all a round of applause for their efforts. With that, hang out, look at the stuff, go home, go to Cersei's, whatever. Thank you all so much for coming. There is a donation box in the back for the Columbus Area Historical Society. And thanks, have a safe trip home. Thank you very much for coming.